So I guess I have time for a couple of questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a question, but a comment. So you were talking about the one wetland that had the 2-year maintenance on,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize it, but I took Dr. Tom Rosberg, Drake University chair of the botany department, had a wetland identification class that we organized, and we took the class out there. And I did not know this ahead of time, but he was he said, wow, look at this species diversity. And look at this, there's pickerel weed and this and that. So he was surprised by the species diversity, and that goes to tell me that maintenance really paid off. I wasn't able to communicate that, but yeah.
Sometimes now we're even trying to promote a third year, we'll do a 3-year maintenance contract instead of just 2. We did 2 years of maintenance contract.
That was part of some of the mitigation that was done on site too, so I'm sure there was a high level of diversity that went into the planting mix originally.
But he was highly complimentary.
Yeah, kind of up in there, the wetland we were talking about. Yeah.
Question maybe for the city even, with wet ponds, but being implemented in more of a greenway system, have you seen any differences in sedimentation? Is it what you expect, or is it better with green space above it? How are we going with sedimentation?
Well, on a large scale, this is the only one that has a forebay that's, to my knowledge, publicly owned, and we did clean that out. Like, our public works staff rented a piece of big equipment and we cleaned that out, and I think we were all surprised how much material was in there. And so, yes, it does, I think it does a good job of catching it upstream when you are implementing a system like that. Now, directly upstream of this is the big John Deere facility, and they have gravel parking lots, so it's not, I guess, really surprising that we saw quite a bit of sediment in there.
And some of that too dates back to like some of the active construction that was going on in the development itself, because there was 100 or so acres of this development that they would have on-site controls and stuff, but we all know that's not perfect. So there was some of that that got into.
So how often, I guess, would you say, or anticipate the cleaning?
Well, that was what, 2008, and we did that 2 years ago. So I wouldn't guess that we would have, I mean, once you're probably fully developed, I would think that if you're looking at it every 10 years, you're probably doing pretty well. Maybe a little bit sooner at the beginning, but.
And one thing about the design of this, you can see there's kind of there's an armor flex mat crossing here. So this was designed so you could get truck and equipment access all around the Fort Bay area and all around the perimeter of the pond as well. I think there's a, do you have a question?
No, I have a question.
Question was, so some of those bioretention cells, especially the swales, have been in how many years now? Is it 8? 8 years. And I know we talk about inspection and maintenance, but there's another M word, which is monitoring. And when I mean monitoring, I'm not talking about water quality type monitoring, but looking at infiltration rates and performance. Have you started looking at that?
We have a couple of, I'll call them bioretention cells that exist on State Street that weren't functioning, and we dug them up and did it again because they had some fabric in it, and that fabric had sealed, and so it's more, I think we've done a medium job of that. You know, when we see some issue, we've gone in and repaired it. So you're on that 10-year or so cycle, which is probably a little bit better than your typical gray infrastructure, but I mean, it definitely needs to be looked at.
And the grass bioretention cells, how are they? I've seen some of them when we had the class out there, but they seem to be doing fine.
Most of them look pretty good. I think that we're to the point where we may need to work with homeowners to, because you know you have that thatch build up, and now we're, to a certain extent, you're getting sediment in that little flume that's going down, and water sits there a little bit, not so much that's impacting traffic or it's causing icing or anything like that, but we might, I've noticed some of those that I think, oh, you know, if I live there, we go out and lower it down, but the homeowners probably don't know to do that. So maybe something that we should do as a city, sort of lower that a little bit.
But this is just a nice example where, a nice application where if people do not want native plants or whatever, this is a low maintenance bioretention cell that, and 8 years old, and it's doing well. The only design change I would make is I would lower the inlet, because turf grass and things accumulate. I would
Yeah,
lower
you
the
get
inlet 2 to 3 inches.
You get that sedimentation, and it
Yes.
just drops in the grass right there, and it raises the grade about 2 or 3 inches after a few years, so then the water stands.
Yeah.
They do one of those other ones.
I think the other thing we could do just a little bit better is providing a little more education to our homeowners in situations like this. We do have a lot of places where people have approached us, but we don't have the time to do that outreach. And I think that would, you could get people to really buy into it and understand what they need to do. Like, oh, if you see a little dirt like that, just scoop it up, throw it away, or let us know if you are unable to, so.
So this is a site that we've kind of done what we're gonna be talking about before we had all the rules, and for the most part, there's not a lot of big changes you maybe make to how it looks, how it's working.
You got some here, him.
Well, all it's doing is the city, yeah.
I think like the city of Des Moines is talking about with Hubble, that this is an incredible amenity to our community. I mean, people don't realize how, what a wonderful walkable space is. As we were building our house, we lived there, and it's just wonderful to, we rented an apartment. It is wonderful to be able to walk over to go out to eat, and there's trails, and my son fished in Vintage Lake. I mean, everything was right there, and I think that really pushing that, using it as a resource, thinking of it as in a different way is a really good selling point. Now, I think that the maintenance aspect is challenging, and understanding the staffing needs and the financial needs of that is something that we're still working with, we're through. And so you have to build that in up front, I think, really well. But, as we get better at it, I think we're doing a better job of talking about that up front. I mean, it's not, obviously, you all know in this room, it's not a maintenance-free practice, but, but nothing really is, so.
So these were a couple of examples of projects that are actually here in the metro. I mean, we didn't have to go to Portland to go find them. They're here. Next, what we'd like to turn to then is returning to the local ordinance and policy guide from the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual that we looked at last time a little bit, just kind of a quick walkthrough, because this starts to form the basis of, as we in our communities start to look at raising the level of stormwater management and what those standards might be with unified sizing criteria, et cetera, of identifying, well, what are those elements that you need to make sure are being considered as part of your codes. And the highlighting of all of the elements, starting with number 1, are things that we added. That's not in the original document. Those are things that we added, where we thought perhaps the green might be things that should be consistent across the metro. The blue, we're not real sure. Peach probably are going to be things that are going to be individualized to each city. Each city's going to have to take that on. It's going to be different. But with the goal with Capital Crossroads of trying to look for, what's that 80% consistency level across the metro to try to make things easier when we do deal with development. So I'll turn things over to you, Jennifer, to walk us through this. Then we're going to we'll take a break after we get through this part, and then come back together for 3 short small group discussions centered on element number 1 as highlighted.
All right, thanks. So we've heard a lot of good information today, and this will be kind of the transition into the real work that you need to do. So not just listening and asking questions, but really helping to kind of shape things. So last time we talked a little bit about the local ordinance policy guidance, what kinds of things are in there, and just to recap that, ISWIM is guidance, and so we need to have some meat to that guidance. So that's what we're going to get to and talk about today. And he gave a pretty good indication of how we highlighted this sheet, and I just want to work through it just a little bit with you to kind of show you where we're going to start today and then where we think we're going to go in the future and how that fits in. So this document really kind of highlights the ones that we at least thought were the key places to start, kind of prioritized order at getting to them. And we'll start with number one. So number one is number one on the sheet, and that is, clearly identify what unified sizing criteria elements are going to be enforced by the jurisdiction. So, in this case, hopefully overall in the metro area, what are those release rates? So we're going to go into the small group discussions in a few minutes and talk about, using the models, the pre-settlement condition, the large storm release rates. So that's number one. So then I want to just quickly take you through the other ones that we'll hit on in the coming sessions as the higher priority off of this sheet, so that you're aware of kind of how the thinking might go. So this one, we kind of talked about last time that some of the practices and guidance, like the unified sizing criteria chapter, has the terms in essential target and advisory, so that if we refer to that, the things that are already called out as such will be put in place for you. So that's another thing that we'll be taking a look at a little bit more and just, talking through some of that in the future. Here's what part of it looks like in the unified sizing chapter that we sent out to you. The next one is number 7, because I put a 7 on it. So if you look at your sheet number 7, what studies and plans are going to be required? The types of things that we want looked at and submitted when we go about taking in those types of developments or practices, and the things we'll need to look at in order to, we have a stormwater management plan, a soil management plan. So talking through what that will be within the metro. The different number 8, the required enforcement documents. So what will be provided as part of the approval process, maintenance agreements, covenants, easements, to have access depending on if it's public or private, and how that might go together. So that's another one of them that we'll get to in the future. A big key part of this is floodplain management and stream buffers. So how that ties in with it, and we've got some models that we've been working on in the metro that are actually being followed as a group and looked at in Eastern Polk County and looked at in Western, so we can kind of roll that in when we get onto that discussion on number 10. Number 11 on the sheet, the plan review process, the checklist, what it's going to be like when a plan review comes in, the materials that may need to be submitted for it, what design calculations do we want with it, hopefully making it streamlined so that as a reviewer like myself, I can easily review the information that the engineers and consultants give, as so could the city, and that the engineers and designers know exactly the kinds of things that will help make this get through quickly. So that's number 11. Number 13, identifying some of the better site design things that we want to see in these, kind of like a couple of these projects really talked about. How can we use stormwater not just to take care of it, but become an amenity to, what kinds of things can we put in there that are a win-win for lots of things, including stormwater? So that's something that number 13 we'll talk about. And then number 14, we've talked about this before, but just clearly identifying that when do you use iSwim, and when do you use SUDAS, and when do you use the river restoration toolbox, and how do they all fit together? So that is kind of what we thought on this sheet were the high priorities to start with. That's the first tier. We'll likely get into the next ones but these were ones that we were hoping, thinking, talking about maybe making the same as part of this ordinance, where some of the other features may change by city. So that was kind of the starting point with today, starting with number 1 and these 3 different sections that we'll talk about after break to kind of have those conversations and see if we can come up with some agreement on those. So kind of quick, big picture.
Because if you recall, I think on our very first meeting, one of the questions we asked was, what's the end product look like? Or maybe it was last meeting, I've lost track. And what came out of that was, the language for adoption into, our individual codes. And so here, what we were trying to do is try to help kind of focus in, well, what language should we start working on working on writing, and we wanted to show this to you. This gives us a framework to work within, and then with the idea that yeah, today after we get back from break, we'll start diving into element number 1. So any feedback that you have on that? Or y'all just want to get out before it snows? Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to take about a 10-minute break then. So we'll have you be back at 2:41. I'll give you that minute. Come back at 2:41, and then we're going to get into our small groups. And like I mentioned, we've got 3 individuals here that are going to give us kind of a 5-minute lead-ins into each small group discussion to help set the stage. And just like last time, we'll have one of us will be at your table to help facilitate and take notes, so you don't have to feel like you have to do that. But I will ask you to make sure we consolidate into 6 groups when we come back. So thank you. I'll even give you till 42 since I kept talking.